Hello and welcome. We are live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next hour, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi wraps up his successful and substantial US visit, addresses Summit of the Future in New York, calls for urgent reform of the institutions of global governance, including UN Security Council. Prime Minister Modi meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of UNGA, reiterates India's willingness to play a constructive role in peaceful resolution of the conflict. West Asia on edge as more than 490 killed in Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon in deadliest strike of the conflict. France called for emergency UNSC meeting. US and UK appeal for calm. Mexico issues red alert after Hurricane John strengthens to a Category 2 storm and threatens to bring flooding. Storm surges in about 30 minutes to coastal areas. All right, news in detail now. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi emplains for India after concluding his successful and substantial three-day visit to the United States, during which he participated in the 6th Quad Leaders Summit in Wilmington, Delaware, met US President Joe Biden in his hometown and addressed the United Nations Summit of the Future. And on the third and final day of his visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Summit of the Future at the United Nations in New York, calling for the primacy of a human-centric approach in our collective quest for a bright global future. The Prime Minister highlighted India's success at scaling sustainable development initiatives. The Prime Minister also called for urgent reform of the institutions of global governance, including the UN Security Council.
Global action must match global ambition.
The statement by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi defines the fundamental course correction needed for a sustainable and equitable future. Prime Minister Modi arrived at the 79th UN General Assembly session to address the Summit of the Future in New York. Prime Minister said, reforms are the only way forward for global peace and development.
वैश्विक शांति एवं विकास के लिए ग्लोबल संस्थाओं में रिफॉर्म्स आवश्यक है. रिफॉर्म इज द की टू रिलेवेंस.
Apart from reform of multilateral institutions and the global governance architecture, the Prime Minister strongly reiterated India's long-standing position that resolution to global conflicts can only be brought about by engaging in dialogue, sitting across the table and not on the battlefield.
सक्सेस का हमारा यह अनुभव हम ग्लोबल साउथ के साथ साझा करने के लिए तैयार है.
Prime Minister said the world must prioritize a human-centric approach. He flagged the continuing threat of terrorism and cybercrimes and advocated strengthening the global digital governance and tech regulation. He also gave an example of how India successfully lifted 250 million people out of poverty. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his address, underlined the key threats and opportunities in the path towards sustainable future. And with its remarkable achievements in poverty alleviation and advances in digital public infrastructure, Prime Minister emphasized that India can show the way. With my colleague Amritpal Singh and camera person Sanjay Jaina, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India at UN headquarters in New York.
Besides, Prime Minister Modi held a bilateral meeting with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the Summit of the Future in New York. The two leaders recalled Prime Minister's recent visit to Ukraine and expressed satisfaction at the continued consolidation of the bilateral ties. The situation in Ukraine as well as the way forward on pursuing a path to peace also figured prominently in their discussions. Prime Minister reiterated India's clear, consistent and constructive approach in favour of a peaceful resolution of the conflict through diplomacy and dialogue as well as engagement between all stakeholders. He conveyed that India remains open to provide all support within its means to facilitate a lasting and peaceful resolution of the conflict.
Their discussions on all matters, the bilateral issues as well as issues surrounding the Russia-Ukraine conflict. President Zelensky was very appreciative of India's attention to these issues and said that Prime Minister's visit had been highly appreciated, and he thanked the Prime Minister for the efforts that he was making for peace and a pathway to finding a way out of this conflict. Both sides appreciated that there was positive momentum on a lot of issues in the bilateral relationship, and they agreed to remain in close touch, either directly or through exchanges of visits at various other levels.
And besides Zelensky, the Prime Minister also met some other world leaders, including Vietnamese President, Armenian President and Secretary of State of the Holy See. PM Modi and Vietnam's President To Lam took stock of the full range of India-Vietnam friendship. Two leaders deliberated on ways to enhance comprehensive strategic partnership, strengthen bilateral cooperation, as well as exchange views on important region and global issues. They also reaffirmed the importance of deep civilizational and cultural links between the two countries. Two sides look forward to adding momentum in sectors such as connectivity, trade, culture and more. PM Modi also met Armenian counterpart Nikol Pashinyan on the sidelines of the Summit of the Future. And the Prime Minister also held a great conversation with Secretary of State of the Holy See, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. The Holy See is the central government of the Catholic Church and is headquartered in Vatican City State. All right, for more on this, Amritpal Singh joins us from New York. Amritpal, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's successful and substantial visit comes to an end, from Quad to addressing Indian community to UN summit and bilaterals. Tell us, what are the key outcomes of the visit?
It was a short visit of about 55-56 hours that the Prime Minister spent in the United States. It would have, I would say, had three components to it. One, the India-US bilateral part of it. We saw the meeting between Joe Biden and Narendra Modi at the personal home of Joe Biden in Wilmington in Delaware State, and not at his official residence, that's the White House, giving a personal touch to it. All areas, all aspects of the relationship were discussed. The commitment was made to enhance the relationship to the next level in areas of mutual interest. And of course, then the antiques were returned to India. That would be, one would say, came out the outcome of the bilateral part of the visit. The other, of course, was the Quad summit, in which the Prime Minister participated along with the other three leaders. That's the President of the United States and the Prime Ministers of Australia and Japan. Multiple agreements were signed, from infra to medicals to maritime cooperation, logistics agreement, the Cancer Moonshot Initiative. So, and a commitment to Quad increasing its ambit and to the Indian Ocean region, not just looking at Quad as a military alliance. In fact, making it very clear that it is not a military alliance, it is an alliance or a grouping which will work for development, meeting the developmental goals and aspirations of the countries of the region. The third aspect, of course, was yesterday's address to the Summit of the Future at the UN headquarters, where Prime Minister Modi spoke about various things, but he said the time for action is now. Also, another point that he made was India's long-standing standoff that the way to the resolution of conflicts is by sitting across the table and not on the battlefield. He did address a diaspora event where he, addressed the Indian community, saying, putting out how India is progressing and asking them to come and be a part of India's development story. So that I would categorize as the outcomes of Prime Minister Modi's 3-day visit to the United States.
Also, Amritpal, PM Modi met with various world leaders, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and second meeting between two leaders in about a month. What do we know more about this bilateral?
Well, it was an interesting bilateral which the Foreign Secretary in his briefing made it clear that was sought by the Ukrainian side. Now, this is the third time they've met in as many months. So it's very clear that when India says that dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward, and India has offered its assistance, but saying that you can only resolve it across the table, not on the battlefield, it is sort of making sense to both sides. He's met President Putin earlier, he's met President Zelensky, but here again at the UN he sought, President Zelensky sought his meeting. That speaks about India's one rising stature, and secondly India's the sane voice, the voice of reason, having some impact clearly. And of course Prime Minister mentions it at the UN headquarters in his address. So India's voice of reason finds some resonance in the global community.
All right, thank you for getting us the latest and summing up the Prime Minister visit to the US. Moving on, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is also in New York to attend the 79th General Debate Session of United Nations General Assembly. Ahead of his speech, he met his counterparts from the G4 countries, reaffirming the grouping's commitment to urgent reform of the United Nations Security Council through text-based negotiations. The G4 nations comprise Brazil, Germany, India and Japan. Dr. Jaishankar also met his Venezuela counterpart on the sidelines of the session. Both the leaders discussed energy, health and economic cooperation, also reformed multilateralism. The UN General Assembly High-Level Week will begin on Tuesday with representatives of 193 member countries convening at the World Body's headquarters in New York. This year's theme is leaving no one behind, acting together for the advancement of peace, sustainable development and human dignity for present and future generations. The general debate, the key event of any UN General Assembly, begins on September 24th with speeches from leaders of member states. Each country will be given 15 to 20 minutes to speak before the international community. As is tradition, Brazil's president will be the first to take the podium, followed by US President Joe Biden. Over 6 days, a succession of world leaders will address the assembly, laying out their national priorities and views on global affairs. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. J&K all set for second phase of assembly polls, voting for second phase to be held for 26 seats on September 25th. And we'll get you the weather updates across the globe. And ahead of one of the biggest Hindu festivals, people practice Garba, the traditional dance of Gujarat, in Ahmedabad. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. Updates on assembly elections in India, Jammu and Kashmir. After an impressive turnout of over 61% in the first phase, the Union Territory is now set for the second phase. 26 assembly constituencies will go to polls in this phase on September 25th. The second phase of the elections covers the constituencies in Reasi, Rajouri and Poonch districts in the Jammu region and Srinagar and Budgam districts of Kashmir Valley. The Jammu and Kashmir Assembly election is being conducted in 3 phases, with voting on September 18 already been held, September 25th and October 1st. The counting of votes will take place on October 8th. Assembly elections are being held for the first time in Jammu and Kashmir after the abrogation of Article 370. All right, moving on to some weather updates across the globe. After drenching parts of the country with heavy rainfall, the southwest monsoon has started its retreat from parts of West Rajasthan and Kutch nearly a week later than usual. But rainfall caused by the southwest monsoon has fallen short of the long period average in eastern and northeastern states. After an extended lull, Mumbai woke up to moderate showers, with the India Met Department sounding a yellow alert in the metropolis and its neighbouring districts till Wednesday. Also, the India Met Department has issued a heavy rain alert for 14 districts of Telangana. Now, Japan's remote Izu Islands south of Tokyo were hit by a small tsunami on Tuesday, with no immediate reports of damage after a magnitude 5.9 earthquake occurred near an unpopulated island farther south in the Pacific Ocean. A tsunami of 50 centimeters reached Hachijo Island, one of the Izu Islands, about 40 minutes after the earthquake. Japan sits on top of 4 major tectonic plates and experiences around 1,500 quakes every year, most of them minor. The impact is generally contained even with larger tremors, thanks to advanced building techniques and well-practiced emergency procedures. Now, Hurricane John rapidly strengthened to a Category 2 storm on Monday and was expected to intensify further before hitting Mexico's southern Pacific coast in the coming hours. Mexico issues red alert as Hurricane John barrels towards southern coast. The hurricane is set to make landfall late on Monday or early Tuesday on the southern Mexican Pacific coast. National Hurricane Center says John is expected to become a major hurricane as it approaches the coast of southern Mexico, NHC said in a statement. Hurricane was last located 89 kilometers south from Mexico's Guerrero state. Now, the desert city of Phoenix, Arizona suffered a record 113 straight days with temperatures over 38 degrees Celsius this year, breaking previous record of 76 days of overset in 1993. Leaders at climate meetings in New York warn of growing mistrust between nations as a result of human-led climate challenge and change. Heat has killed over 256 people so far this year in Phoenix, Maricopa County, and is the suspected cause of 393 other deaths. The county had a record 645 heat deaths last year. Now, Argentine firefighters and ground crews continued their efforts to control the wildfires in the northern region of Cordoba. Wildfires have devastated over 16,000 hectares of land. The fires began last week and were exacerbated by high temperatures, dry conditions and strong winds. Over 700 firefighters were deployed across the province this Monday to douse the fires. Cordoba authorities reported the arrest of 2 individuals suspected of initiating the fire. Now, Climate Week in New York City kicked off as the world leaders started gathering. It's a platform for showcasing leading climate action and discussing how to do more. Climate Week, which starts at the same time as the United Nations General Assembly, will include hundreds of events across Manhattan. Azerbaijan is due to host a 2-week UN Climate Summit in November that would typically be the biggest moment on the calendar. But COP29 is expected to draw far fewer business executives and bankers than last year's COP28 event in the financial hub, Dubai. At the summit of the Future plenary, Prime Minister of Vanuatu, Charlotte Salvai, addressed the urgent need to confront climate change impacts, urging that actions taken today must not compromise the rights and well-being of future generations. On behalf of Pacific Small Island Developing States, PM of Vanuatu emphasized the importance of scaling efforts to protect the environment and accelerate the transition to a sustainable future. World leaders adopted a pact for the future on Sunday that includes a global digital compact and a declaration on future generations.
The commitment outlined in the Pact for the Future and the Declaration on our future generations compel us to ensure that our action today do not compromise the rights and well-being of those who will inherit this planet. We must confront the cause and impact of climate change head-on, scaling our efforts to protect the environment and accelerate our transition to a sustainable future. We must integrate climate change into peace operation mandates and ensure comprehensive risk.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news. More than 400 Naxalites from the National Liberation Front of Tripura and the All Tripura Tiger Force are likely to mass surrender at the ceremony in northeastern state of Tripura. The move comes after a peace agreement signed 3 weeks ago by the centre, the Tripura government and the two Naxal outfits. The event marks one of the largest surrenders in the state's history. Schools in Assam's Kamrup district will be closed from September 24 to 27 due to excessive heat and rising temperatures. According to the district elementary education officer, the decision was taken in order to safeguard the students from the ill effects of exposure of excessive heat. Northern state of Uttar Pradesh will host the second edition of UP International Trade Show in Gautam Buddha Nagar on Wednesday. Showcasing the trade and culture of the state, the 5-day event will conclude on 29th September. It will also highlight Vietnam as the partner country. As India gears up for the festive mode, people practice Garba, the traditional dance of Gujarat, ahead of Navratri in Ahmedabad. Navratri is one of the most important Hindu festivals that is celebrated all over the world and offers prayer to Hindu goddess Durga. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. Amid economic crisis, Sri Lanka's leftist leader Anura Kumara Dissanayake takes office as president. Amid tight campaigning between Harris and Trump ahead of November elections, Trump visited a local grocery store to check on inflation, blaming his rival. And the gunman of Colorado market shooting convicted.
अगर फिरदौस बर्रुए ज़मीं अस्त, हमी अस्तो हमी अस्तो हमी अस्त. Jammu and Kashmir, nature's finest works. A land of verdant valleys, pristine lakes, striking autumns, unforgettable majestic beauty. A place of unwavering devotion, wholehearted smiles, and warm hospitality. World famous for its exquisite artistry. Leader in diverse agricultural products. Heartland of winter sports. Jammu and Kashmir is vibrant, diverse, ambitious, future-focused, full of life. Welcome to heaven on earth.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Recap of what we've done so far. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi wraps up his successful and substantial US visit, addresses Summit of the Future in New York, calls for urgent reform of the institutions of global governance, including UN Security Council. Prime Minister Modi meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of UNGA, reiterates India's willingness to play a constructive role in peaceful resolution of the conflict. West Asia on edge as more than 490 killed in Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon in deadliest strike of the conflict. France calls for emergency UNSC meeting. US and UK appeal for calm. And Mexico issues red alert after Hurricane John strengthens to a Category 2 storm and threatens to bring flooding. Storm surges in about 30 minutes to coastal areas. Sri Lanka's leftist leader Anura Kumara Dissanayake took office as president on Monday, riding on the promise to bring change in the island nation long led by powerful political families. Country is emerging from its worst economic crisis in more than 7 decades. Colombo-based and well-educated women's leader NPP National List MP Harini Amarsurya was announced as the Prime Minister. It has created a perception of political change in the debt-ridden country. Dissanayake ran as the candidate for the National People's Power NPP alliance, which includes his Janatha Vimukhi Peramuna JVP party that traditionally championed Marxist economic policies centered on protectionism and state intervention. In recent years, the party has taken more centrist positions. Tasks he now faces include setting up a new cabinet and wooing parliament, where his party has just 3 of 225 seats to pass a budget under the terms of $2.9 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund. Sri Lanka's close neighbours India, Pakistan and Maldives also congratulated the Sanaike on his win, along with China, the largest bilateral creditor. Moving on to some other stories, Israel's large-scale airstrikes across Lebanon resulted in more than 492 deaths and over 1,500 wounded as thousands of people in the south of the country fled for safety. Israel's army has said it launched more than 650 attacks on some 1,300 Hezbollah targets across Lebanon over the past 24 hours. Israeli warplanes conducted intensive raids in southern and eastern Lebanon, forcing thousands of residents from the cities to flee towards Beirut and Mount Lebanon. Also on Monday, Israeli strikes in Beirut targeted Ali Karki, a senior Hezbollah commander. Later, Hezbollah issued a statement claiming that Karki is safe. In response to the Israeli attacks, Hezbollah fired over 150 rockets towards northern Israel throughout Monday. Since October 8, 2023, Hezbollah and the Israeli army have been exchanging fire across the Lebanese-Israeli border amid fears of a broader conflict. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent a short video statement addressed to the Lebanese people. Netanyahu urged people of Lebanon to get out of harm's way now.
I have a message for the people of Lebanon. Israel's war is not with you. It's with Hezbollah. For too long, Hezbollah has been using you as human shields. It placed rockets in your living rooms and missiles in your garage. Those rockets and missiles are aimed directly at our cities, directly at our citizens. To defend our people against Hezbollah strikes, we must take out those weapons. Now, starting this morning, the IDF has warned you to get out of harm's way. I urge you, take this warning seriously. Don't let Hezbollah endanger your lives and the lives of your loved ones. Don't let Hezbollah endanger Lebanon. Please, get out of harm's way now. Once our operation is finished, you can come back safely to your homes.
And the world leaders and the United Nations called for urgent de-escalation, with France calling for emergency UN Security Council meeting on Lebanon. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot told the UN General Assembly on Monday that it has requested that an emergency meeting of the Security Council be held on Lebanon this week. Barrot said the strikes conducted on both sides of the Blue Line must immediately end.
À cet instant, je salue.
I commend the work of Blue Helmets. Each day they work for security and peace around the world. I am thinking of the men and women in Lebanon and the French continent there. These strikes conducted on both sides of the Blue Line and in the region more broadly must end. France once again calls on the parties and those that support them to de-escalate and avoid a regional conflict that would be devastating for everyone. For that reason, I have asked for an emergency meeting on Security Council on Lebanon this week.
The United States has also called for de-escalation, with a spokesperson saying that the United States does not support a cross-border escalation between Israel and Hezbollah, and that Washington was going to discuss concrete ideas with allies and partners to prevent the war from broadening. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon has expressed grave concern for the well-being and safety of civilians and reiterated its strong call for a diplomatic solution.
I can tell you that the Secretary General is indeed alarmed by the escalating situation along the Blue Line. He's very concerned about the large number of civilian casualties being reported by the Lebanese authorities, as well as the thousands of displaced persons amidst the most intense exchange of fire across the Blue Line since October of last year. He expresses grave concern for the safety of civilians, both in southern Lebanon and in northern Israel, as well as the UN staff in those areas.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has reaffirmed that no member state has the right to withdraw borders by force. He was speaking at the United Nations Summit of the Future He added that we will not accept efforts to tear down, dilute or fundamentally alter the core principles of the UN Charter: sovereignty, territorial integrity and independence.
We will not accept efforts to tear down, dilute or fundamentally alter the core principles of the UN Charter: sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence. We will continue to affirm that no member state has the right to redraw borders by force or repress their own people. We'll continue to oppose the idea that nations can assert spheres of influence or dictate who other countries ally or partner with.
And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky met German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro, at the United Nations in New York on Monday. Both the leaders discussed how to bring a just peace in Ukraine closer as part of the meeting in New York. Further, during the meeting with Almagro, Zelensky thanked the OAS for its participation in the Ukrainian Organized Peace Summit held in Switzerland in June. Zelensky will present his victory plan to the leadership of the United States in the UN General Assembly. Meanwhile, speaking at the summit of the future at the United Nations on Monday, Zelensky urged the world leaders to support Ukraine for a just and peaceful future.
The world needs a peaceful future and sustainable development. And I say this as the president of Ukraine, a country resisting Russia's brutal colonial aggression. And we know exactly how much global unity can achieve, both here at the UN and through the peace summits for Ukraine. We are now preparing for the second peace summit, moving forward with our partners step by step according to the peace formula. I invite all leaders, nations to continue supporting our joint efforts for a just and peaceful future.
Volodymyr Zelensky also presented Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida with the Order of Prince Yaroslav the Wise in New York, honoring his service to Ukraine and its people on Monday. Zelensky expressed his gratitude for Japan's steadfast support since the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Japan has provided Ukraine with $4.5 billion in aid and supplied equipment to strengthen Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Now, UN Nuclear Agency Chief Rafael Grossi has said that the situation remains serious around Russia's Kursk nuclear power plant. Ukrainian troops remain in Russia's southern Kursk region after pouring over the border last month, but remain some 40 kilometers from the facility. Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Grossi, visited the Kursk plant made up of 4 reactors last month and said it would be extremely exposed if it came under attack, as the facility had no containment dome. He also said that IAEA had no plans to station observers permanently at the station, including the Zaporizhzhia station. Grossi has visited the Zaporizhzhia station 5 times since the invasion and urged both sides to show restraint to guard against any nuclear accident. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country is closer to the end of the war in Russia. In an interview, Zelensky said, "We are closer to the peace than we think." He urged Washington and other partners to continue supporting Ukraine. The Ukrainian leader said that only from a strong position can Ukraine push Russian President Vladimir Putin to stop the war. Washington and its allies have provided a multi-billion-dollar assistance program to Ukraine since its war with Russia, while also imposing several rounds of sanctions against Moscow. Putin says peace talks can begin only if Kiev abandons swaths of eastern and southern Ukraine to Russia and drops its NATO membership ambitions. Now, Haiti's advisor to the president of the Transitional Presidential Council, Leslie Voltaire, urged the international community to support his country at the UNGA, saying Haiti faces a multifaceted crisis that is jeopardizing the very foundations of the states.
The stability of Haiti is essential not just for the region, but also for the global balance. In order to overcome these challenges, Haiti needs the support of everyone. Direct foreign investment, the fight against inequalities, and the bolstered support. Bolstered support in security, climate justice. These are all essential in order to ensure a prosperous future in our country.
Moving on to U.S. election updates now. Former U.S. President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are campaigning in battleground states this week as they race to make their pitch to voters. Donald Trump made an impromptu visit to a local grocery store in the crucial 2024 election swing state of Pennsylvania, commiserating with staff about inflation, which he blamed on his Democratic rival Kamala Harris.
We're going to win the election. We're going to turn the country around. We're going to get energy prices way down. That's going to bring other prices way down. And we're going to take care of crime. We're going to stop the crime. And we're going to deport the criminals that have been brought into our country.
Now in Pennsylvania, one of 7 critical battleground states, Harris maintained a 4-point advantage, leading 50% to 46%, with a margin of error of plus or minus 3.8 percentage points, according to the Times poll. Now, Republican Donald Trump said in an interview released on Sunday that he will not make a 4th consecutive run for the U.S. presidency if he loses this election.
If you're not successful this time, do you see yourself running again in 4 years?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I think that will be it. I don't see that at all. I think that hopefully we're going to be successful.
The U.S. President Joe Biden met UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan on Monday for talks on conflicts in the Middle East and Sudan, despite concerns over the Gulf powers' own role in the Sudan conflict. In a joint statement after their meeting, Biden and Sheikh Mohammed said they shared concern about the risk of imminent atrocities as fighting continues in Sudan's war-torn Darfur region. The two leaders also called for an immediate ceasefire in the brutal civil war between Sudan's army and the paramilitary rapid support forces and a return to the political process. And the man who killed 10 people in a mass shooting at a Colorado grocery store in 2021 was convicted on Monday of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ahmed Alivi Alisa had pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The jury instead found the Syria-born man guilty in Boulder District Court on 10 counts of first-degree murder. Jurors also found him guilty on dozens of counts of attempted murder and weapons offences. And parents of 43 Mexican students gathered in the capital to demand justice a decade after their children vanished. Mexico is preparing to mark on September 26th the 10th anniversary of the Ayotzinapa case, a globally recognized incident involving the disappearance of 43 student teachers. The students vanished from the southwestern city of Iguala in 2014. According to the government, they were abducted by corrupt police officers in collusion with a local drug gang. To date, only the remains of 3 out of 43 missing students have been conclusively identified. Now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. California passes law to ban or restrict smartphones in schools amid a growing consensus that excess usage can increase the risk of mental illness and impair learning. 13 other states this year have banned or restricted cell phones in schools. An exceptionally rare diamond necklace from the 18th century is displayed at the Sotheby's in London ahead of going under the hammer in Geneva in November, where it is estimated to fetch between 1.8 to 2.8 million US dollars. The 18th century jewel, weighing 300 carats, was made in the decade before 1789 French Revolution and was last seen in public in 1973 before being sold into a private collection. The piece went in public display for the first time in 50 years on Monday at the Sotheby's London showrooms. The recent public art installation in Toronto featuring 8,000 giant dominoes tumbling has captured the imagination of locals and visitors alike. Spanning an impressive 2.5 kilometers, the installation connects vibrant neighborhoods from the bustling King West area to Canoe Landing and the scenic waterfront. And the saga, the legendary submarine designed in 1960s, is up on display, offering the public a rare glimpse into maritime history. As part of the Heritage Days, the association in charge of its upkeep is showing the public this extraordinary 28-meter vessel, which is still the largest civilian submarine in the world. This extraordinary 28-meter vessel holds the title of the largest civilian submarine in the world, making it a fascinating attraction for visitors of all ages. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. Asia stocks hit 2.5-year high on China's stimulus measures. Rafael Nadal named in Spain's squad for the Davis Cup. And we'll show you the glimpses of star-studded L'Oreal fashion show in Paris. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Time now for business updates. US stock closed modestly higher on Monday as investors assess whether a trend will develop in the week following the Federal Reserve's rate cut. On the data front, US business activity remained steady in September, while average prices for the goods and services increased at the fastest pace in 6 months, potentially signaling a rise in inflation in the months ahead. According to preliminary data, the S&P 500 gained 0.28%, while the Nasdaq Composite gained 0.14%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.15%. All eyes are on Friday's personal consumption expenditures figure for August, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. Analysts say this release will be the week's most significant catalyst. Now, Asian stocks too rose on Tuesday to their highest in more than 2.5 years, boosted by a slew of Chinese stimulus measures. China's top financial regulators unveiled a slate of measures, saying it would cut bank reserves by 50 basis points while reducing mortgage rates to try to spur sluggish to economic growth. The move sent Chinese stocks higher, with Shanghai Composite Index opening 1% higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index too jumped over 2% in early trade. Meanwhile, investor focus will also be on the Reserve Bank of Australia's policy decision later in the day. It is widely expected to stand pat on rates, although the Fed's 50 basis points cut last week has raised some expectations Australia could follow the Fed, ahead of which Australian dollar remains solid near a 9-month high of 0.6839, as RBA is expected to maintain current rates at 4.35%. Now, if kept unchanged, experts say Australians would be stuck at that rate for close to 6 weeks, with no RBA meeting scheduled for October, while 2 others are scheduled for November and December, meaning there are limited opportunities for that long-awaited cut to happen this year. All right, sports updates now. We'll start with tennis. Rafael Nadal has been named in Spain's squad for the Davis Cup Final 8 in November. joining forces with Carlos Alcaraz, Roberto Bautista Agut, Pablo Carreno Busta and Marcel Granollers. The 38-year-old former world number 1 has not competed since the Paris 2024 Olympics, where he was beaten by Novak Djokovic in the singles and exited the doubles in quarterfinals with his partner Alcaraz. Nadal withdrew from the US Open and Laver Cup due to fitness concerns. Spain's six-time Davis Cup champions will face the Netherlands in the quarterfinals starting November 19. Football now, Manchester City midfielder Rodrigo Hernandez Cascante, better known as Rodri, suffered an ACL injury during the Premier League match against Arsenal. The Spaniard, who has only played 66 minutes in the league this season, was sidelined for City's first two games against Chelsea and Ipswich due to a hamstring issue. Rodri returned to the lineup in City's 2-1 victory over Brentford, playing 45 minutes and made his first league start of the season against Arsenal. Unfortunately, he was forced off in the 21st minute following a collision with Thomas Partey. Rodri was adjudged the player of the tournament during Euro 2024. However, he might have to sit out for the rest of the season due to injury. Now, Emma Raducanu has withdrawn from the China Open in Beijing due to a foot injury. The 21-year-old Brit retired from her Korean Open quarterfinals in Seoul after sustaining the injury. Although her name appeared in the Beijing draw, she pulled out shortly after. Raducanu shared the news on social media that her foot injury will take time to heal and she will not be able to take part in Beijing. Ranked 54 in the world, Raducanu was set to face a qualifier in the first round with a potential second-round clash against 5th seed Zheng Qinwen. Her next scheduled tournament is in Wuhan on October 7. Now, the Women's Super League and Women's Championship have secured a groundbreaking multi-year title sponsorship deal with Barclays. It is the most lucrative commercial agreement in British women's football to date. This deal, which follows the league's takeover by Women's Professional Leagues Limited in August, provides a significant financial boost aimed at further developing the women's game. The Football Association highlighted this renewal as the largest sponsorship in British women's football history, with Barclays doubling their investment to further enhance their commitment to the sport. Now, Indian shuttler PV Sindhu set to resume her campaign in new Olympic cycle at the Arctic Open Super 500 from October 8th to 13th in Finland, her father PV Ramanna said on Monday. Sindhu has been away from international events since her pre-quarterfinal exit from Paris Olympics on August 1st and currently been training in Hyderabad under Anup Sridhar. The two-time Olympic medal-winning shuttler decided to take a break from international events since she lost to Hebing Xiao in the pre-quarterfinals in Paris Olympics. Sindhu has been titleless since July 2022 when she won the Singapore Open. Cricket now, opener Sahil Parekh's blistering unbeaten century powered India under-19 to a dominant 9-wicket win over Australia, securing a 2-0 series lead in the youth ODIs. Parekh's 109 of 75 balls, including 14 fours and 5 sixes, helped India chase down the target of 177 in just 22 overs. After losing Rudra Patel early, Parekh and Abhigyan Kundu put up a 153-run partnership to seal the victory. Earlier, India's bowlers led by Samarth Nagaraj, Mohammad Inan and Kiran Chormale, who took 2 wickets each, restricted Australia to 176 in 49.3 overs. Addison Sherif was the top scorer for Australia with 39 runs. The final match of the series is set for Thursday. And L'Oreal hosted the 7th edition of its star-studded fashion show in Paris with celebrities Aishwarya Rai, Alia Bhatt, Jane Fonda, Kendall Jenner veiled the runway that celebrated women and inclusivity. This year's Paris Fashion Week was held at the iconic place de l'Opéra. Among the women on the catwalk this year were Viola Davis and Andy McDowell. Alright, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.